Привет, друзья! Как и договаривались, сейчас у меня будет прямой эфир с Нитаем из Нью-Йорка. Вот, и мы с ним поговорим о его опыте в стартапах и вообще о стартап-индустрии, поскольку у Нитая большой опыт. Все-таки он работал в Apple и также сейчас работает в стартапах. Ну вот, поехали. И поболтаем.
Hello, hello.
Hey!
Как дела, my friend?
Дела замечательно. Good to see you here.
You too, man. How are you?
Doing fine. Just want to anticipate your question about this. Just a result of a very productive workout. Not more than that.
What?
Here, the scratch out
Oh,
here.
yeah. I just saw it. Man,
All
my
right.
hair, I dried my hair really quickly after my shower, and it is.
Yeah, I can see that
Now I didn't really look in the mirror, as you can tell, so.
you've gotten prepared really properly.
Sorry, I just put in my headphones. What'd you say?
Okay, I just want to say that you got prepared really properly. I appreciate that.
Yeah, I really did. I took a shower and everything. You know, working from home, there's days, it's embarrassing to say this, so that the whole world can hear me, but there are days where I do not shower in the morning now that I work from
All right.
home.
Let's keep that
So
a secret.
keep it a secret.
Mhm. All right. So it might be sort of a surprise for you, but I was just wondering what I would like to talk with you about,
Sure.
and I thought to bring up something that has to do with your work. And
Sure.
since you have this experience of working for Apple and both working in the IT sphere, so I have prepared a couple of questions regarding that topic.
Sure.
What do you think?
Let's do it.
Sounds good?
Yeah.
Sounds good?
Yeah,
All right,
definitely.
good. All right. So the first question is, well, the audience might know it, but originally you come from San Francisco, as you mentioned in our previous live stream. And how come you find yourself in New York? Yeah, so this is going to be the first question.
Okay, so the connection between San Francisco and New York kind of goes through several other places. So after I finished up school in San Francisco, I wasn't sure that I wanted, so my undergrad was in journalism, photojournalism to be specific, and I wasn't sure that I wanted to like commit to working in this field.
Right.
So I started to explore a lot of other options in terms of like what could I do to buffer my experience and do something, either an internship or something that will allow me to travel more. So that's how I came across Peace Corps. One of my dad's friends introduced me to this, and I fell in love with it. I know that you know this story, but for the audience, I basically decided at that point that I wanted to travel, and the Peace Corps allowed me to do that. So I applied for that. I went to Ukraine. This is how I met Kostya, and
that's right.
And then in the process, I also met Allison, which you met Allison at the same time you met me.
Allison.
And funny enough, Allison just joined the stream.
Yeah. She's keeping an eye on you.
Yeah, she keeps a close eye on me, man. She likes to remain in the shadows, but she knows everything I'm doing.
Right.
And so when I got back from Peace Corps, Allison and I were really good friends, and I had gone to Colorado at first to live with my buddy, and that fell through. My apartment flooded. It was like an act of God, and I decided up in there to move out to be with her in New York, and I never looked back. And then that's kind of my weird roundabout way of getting to New York from San Francisco.
All right. And then how come you found yourself working for Apple? I presume you were working for Apple in New York. Is that right?
Yeah. So funny enough, I lived closer to Apple when I was in California. Obviously, I lived very close to the
That's the point.
headquarters. When I was in South San Francisco, I was like half an hour, 45 minutes from the Apple headquarters in Cupertino, but I never worked there. Actually, what's funny? I totally forgot about this, Kostya, but I applied to work at Apple when I was in college as like a
You did?
part-time. Yeah, and I didn't even remember that until I started working at Apple, and I went back and looked at my file because like they keep a file on you, and they
All right.
had that first resume that was absolutely like the worst resume I'd ever seen on file. And I was
Okay.
like so embarrassed. I was like, I submitted this? I don't even remember this. But
All
I
right.
had like submitted resumes to all these places. So yeah, I worked for
Good.
Apple in New York, and that's kind of how did I end up at Apple? I mean, honestly, Kostya, I applied to like probably like 200 jobs when I first moved to New
Mm-hmm.
York.
All right.
And one of my buddies from college was working at Apple, and I asked him if he'd refer me, and he did, and the rest is history. I got in, and I was really really lucky and happy to work there. It was a great company to work for.
Just a quick question here. I think many people just wonder how to get what the entering process to Apple looks like. I mean, is there a certain kind of test for new employees or something?
You can say it's a test. It's not like a formal test. Like a lot of companies, you have to sit down and write like
Mm-hmm.
what's called a CSAT. It's kind of like a logic test,
All right.
but not for Apple. No logic test. The way that it worked was you basically go in for a group interview. The first interview is a
Mm-hmm.
group interview with like about 10 other people, and then
Right.
from there you kind of they test you on your a few things. I actually don't know all the things, but I asked one of the
Mm-hmm.
trainers after I got hired. Basically, they look at your ability to work well with others
Okay.
immediately,
Soft
like how
skills, in other words?
mostly soft skills, yes,
Uh-huh.
and also how you lead. They want to see how you lead. So they
Okay.
ask you to lead certain sessions and like brainstorming. So they give you like a very abstract concept, like um, I think
Tell me.
mine was like take like 10 eggs and figure out how you're going to move them using only these tools across this river or something.
All
Like
right.
it's something random like that.
Okay.
And they ask you to do it and graph it out on a whiteboard and
Mm-hmm.
explain your thought process or something like that.
All right.
And I don't think that there's a right answer, a right or wrong answer. They don't really care about the answer. They care about the process and how you handle
Okay.
information. So
So
it's
just like your wife, they keep an eye on you while doing the same.
they're taking a ton of notes. So I think, what's interesting is that I think there's one main facilitator, but I'm fairly certain the whole thing is taped and there's a whole panel that looks
Oh,
at it.
so it's all set up. I
It's
get
all
it.
Big Brother. Yeah, of course. I mean, it's Apple. They're not just the biggest company on the planet for a reason, for no reason. I mean, uh,
May I ask you what kind of duties were you performing at Apple?
yeah. I mean, basically, my role there was I was just like a support person. I fixed all of the devices that they made, and
All right.
so when I first got there, I would like they would start you small, so I just fixed like iPods when I first got there. And then
Mm-hmm.
and then the level up was like just iPhones. And then level up from that, iPads, and then
Right.
computers, like laptops. And then when you got really, really good, you started like fixing crazy Mac Pros, like the really expensive, like $4,000, $5,000, like the
Right.
trash can looking ones. Um, like, and it got very complicated very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
And so there was a lot of
What
soft
year
skills.
did you get hired? What was the year?
2014, I want to say, or 2013. It was right when I
20.
got to New York. What, like either 2013 or 2014. I want to say it was
All right.
2014, like beginning of
Okay.
2014. So I worked there for about
Mm-hmm.
3 or 4 years. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. Yeah. And it was one of the best jobs I ever had, honestly. It was tough. It was very hard because the
Mm-hmm.
clients in the Upper West Side of New York are very demanding. But
Okay.
I felt like I learned a lot, and I made some of my best friends are from Apple.
Still today.
Still to this day, the people that they hire there, that's the main thing I'll say for Apple, is like the benefit for them. They don't really hire you for your technical expertise or anything like that. They look at you as a person. They look at you as a person. They care about who you are. And they really invest in you as a person, regardless of your background, your race, your everything. Like some of the most diverse work colleagues I've ever had was at Apple, just across the board. You get a lot of really cool, interesting individuals, and there's not like one specific type. There's no like Apple mold. You have all sorts of people working there, so it's a fun place to work. I honestly recommend everybody that is interested in technology, if you're looking for a job, just apply to Apple and see what happens. I mean, it's a tough interview process, but it's a fantastic company. There's no doubt.
Sounds very cool, and it's actually very valuable that you have this kind of feedback. After what time did you leave Apple? What year was that you quit Apple?
17, I want to say 2017.
2017. Yeah. So after all these years, still the feedback is pretty positive. That's valuable.
Here's the thing. If I could get paid what I'm getting now after my MBA and everything, which obviously they can't offer me for the same role, I probably would take it, because it's an interesting job. It's always pretty exciting, and you get to meet a ton of cool people, and you get a lot of opportunities there too. I mean, a lot of my friends eventually ended up doing what's called career experiences at Cupertino, and going all over the world. Like I had friends that went to Hong Kong, and went to Shanghai, went to Tokyo, got to travel all over the place to do all sorts of projects for Apple. And it's fun because they have the opportunity. Obviously, they have the finances to do all sorts of interesting projects outside of even their own technology platform. So they do a lot of like sustainability projects. They do a lot of investments in different communities. You don't hear about this often because it's not something that they want.
In fact, you don't.
Publicize. No, you won't hear about it openly. I don't think. They probably are reported on, but it's not what it's not what their like claim to fame is. Obviously, everybody knows what an iPhone is. Everybody knows what a MacBook is, but nobody knows what they actually do for the environment. And I think they're aiming to be 100% green energy by like 2025, which is a massive initiative for such a big company. So
it's huge.
So yeah, I feel very proud being like an Apple alumni. And I think most people are. I think there's a lot of, political issues working inside there, obviously, because it's a corporation after all. But for me, I have nothing but good things to say about Apple for the most part.
That's great.
Yeah,
that's great.
Yep.
Okay, then let's move on. And what were the reasons that made you change your mind and quit Apple and move on?
I think I was ready to go smaller. I mean, in the sense of like understanding how smaller businesses are built, because it's my dream one day to start my own business.
Right.
And so I wanted to be part of like the foundational process of building something from scratch. So that's where I got my MBA while I was at Apple. And then I decided, what better way to learn than just to be on the front lines of a startup company and help them build from the ground up. So it was a fairly natural transition for me, because I had seen everything from kind of a meta level at Apple, where everything was already built out and the infrastructure was perfect, and I saw a very well-oiled machine. But then I wanted to also see how like less
you want to build your own.
Yeah, but I also wanted to see dysfunctional companies to see what to avoid, obviously. And so I got a good. This is my third startup after Apple now that I'm at, so I'm getting a good kind of survey of the first company I worked for. Was very, very small. It was like 15 people in my office that I worked with, and then the second company was like 50, and now I'm at like 200. So I'm slowly like step laddering my way in terms of size of companies as I go throughout my career. If that makes sense.
Step by step.
Yep.
That makes me think of another question. I mean, since you are from San Francisco and the Silicon Valley is just around the corner, as you have mentioned, have you ever considered getting back to that mecca of startups in general? Right?
I've definitely thought about it. It's a good question. It's a very good question. I've definitely thought about it. And to be honest, it's kind of dispersing now. I don't know if you know this, but
Yeah.
it's moving out of California a lot. A lot of startups. I mean, you're seeing a big boom in places like Austin, Texas,
This is what I've heard
and
about. You,
Nashville, I've
you
heard.
won't believe it, but I've heard it thanks to a big Italian, a huge Italian podcast dedicated to the elections between Trump and Clinton. So I heard lots in Italian. I learned a lot about in
Interesting.
Italian about Texas. And there is another Silicon Valley. It's not the Silicon Valley, but Silicon Hills or something like that. I don't remember the term to be exact, to be
You probably know more
precise.
than I do, to be honest. I'm kind of
No,
disconnected
definitely.
from the. So there's there's definitely a shift now, and I think
Okay.
furthermore with COVID, right? We're
Right.
seeing the dispersal of the workforce. Katie says Ann Arbor. So Katie was with me in Peace Corps. Ann Arbor is a town in Michigan that yeah, it's like a college town. That it wouldn't surprise me. It doesn't surprise me that she says that because there's a lot
Okay.
of young and intelligent folks that stick around the
Hmm.
universities that start businesses. But um, sorry, I lost my train of thought now.
Well,
What was I saying?
yeah, you were talking about the dispersing of the Silicon Valley.
So as far as I know, like with COVID now, pretty much everybody in tech is 100% remote. There's no kind of
Okay.
forcing of people back into the offices. And I honestly don't know what it's going to look like, even when
Mm.
everybody's vaccinated and we're quote unquote back
Are
to
you willing
normal
to
life.
get back to your office?
I think so. I think what's going to probably end up happening, though, to be honest, is that
Hmm.
we're going to see kind of a hybrid model of
Right.
people going back part time and working remotely part time. I don't think there's going to be a one size fits all model. I don't think we're going to be
Sure. I
back to
think it's
the
going to be
9 to 5
optional.
office. And I think people will go into the office maybe part days for bigger meetings that they have,
Sure.
or are hands on, like the hands on seminars that a lot of times the startups do for different rollouts of products, etc. So it's
Right.
exciting to see what's happening in this industry. And I think across the board, not just in tech, I think, teaching, I'm sure you've seen it change with Zoom and the advent. It's forced people to really rely on their technology stacks,
Sure.
and I think it's for the best. I think it's going to make everybody much more efficient. I mean, I get so much more work done at home than in the office because I don't have about
You
an hour and a
do?
half of my
Seriously?
day.
With a kid? Come
Yeah, I don't.
on.
So I
No
have
way.
childcare. I have childcare.
What
I
is
don't
that?
torture myself like that. You don't know what childcare is?
Yeah, well, I'm a young dad and I have no idea what childcare is.
No,
Tell
so
me.
I mean, listen, seriously though, and I'm not telling you what to do here, but seriously, I recommend that you find childcare as soon as possible because, listen, working and taking care of kids is one of the hardest things that you can do, and I did that for a while during COVID. So I mean,
That's a
I'm
hard
sure
nut
you
to
can.
crack. I can hear your kids
You can
screaming
hear me
out
screaming,
there.
right? Imagine me working and dealing with that at the same time. I mean, I'm sure you can, but it's
That's what
just,
happens. Right.
but listen, I mean, to each their own. Some people are stronger than others. I am admittedly one of the not strong people. I cannot work and watch my child simultaneously. It's just impossible.
Right.
Especially with kind of the calls that I'm on regularly. Like I have, I deal with big banks. I don't deal with just any customer. I deal with like the
Sure.
JP Morgans of the world and Wells Fargo, and I can't
Right.
afford to have my child screaming on like a high profile like call like that. So
Right.
it's just, anyways. So yeah,
Anyway.
I think that we'll see a lot more all over the world. And I think what's interesting. My friends in Kiev,
Right.
I see a
Tell
lot
me.
of startups popping up in Kiev now, a ton, and they
There are
seem to
many.
be fairly successful. And I think that's it's a testament to the world we live in now. I mean, anybody can start anything from anywhere, in my opinion. I mean, you could go to the Arctic Pole and you could have a startup technically if you had internet. It doesn't matter where you are. I think the face to face is nice to have, obviously, and it creates a human connection.
Sure.
But in the tech world, it's not as vital to have that as much as you need the to connect the dots between everybody. is working. So,
but now that you mention it, well, I partially agree. First of all, this is I have to point out. But secondly, as I'm a person really far from the startup field. But anyway,
sure.
I think I know all the technical things is just one part. How do you call it? One side of the coin. So just one side, but there is another one, and which is investing, right? So wealthy people willing to invest. And I thought one of the distinctive features of the Valley was that was the spot where those two sides were to meet, right? People with money and people with ideas. And as I remember, maybe I'm wrong here, just correct me, but it's not that easy to move it to some other place, right?
So you're theoretically you're correct. Now, in my experience as someone that hasn't done too much fundraising for startups, I know for a fact that nowadays a lot of these connections can be made virtually. Whether or not it's stronger this way, that's debatable. I think you're right.
Yeah.
There is a human element of people seeing you in real time and also talking to you face to face and seeing how you're dressed and how you're put together. Like you said, like we talked about with Apple, like they inspect you, right? Like they do a full like inspection. I think people will learn how to do this virtually now. I think that's going to be the case, especially with COVID. Listen, you think the VCs are sitting in the same room with all of their investments? No, I mean they're trying to, but with COVID, it's simply not possible, especially in the hotspots of the U.S., which are California and New York. Like those are the two big hubs that were historically, business centers. Obviously, Chicago and Seattle and a lot of other metropolitan city centers in the U.S., but I'm talking those two states specifically have been hit the hardest, and so you don't have those opportunities like you did in the past. So it's really forcing the industries to reimagine what it looks like to go through the sales cycle and the investment process and all that. So I think we'll see it go back to the way it was to a certain degree, but who knows? I mean, my guess is as good as yours at this point.
All right. Another question. A piece of advice for beginners, those who would like to try themselves, test themselves in startups?
I mean, it just really depends on what you want to. There's so many different roles at a startup. I mean, my best advice is just to start from the bottom. Just throw yourself in there and find out what you want to do first of all. Like I think that's the hardest part, right? Like, what do you actually want to do with
I didn't know. You tell me.
Skill set. Shit, I'm still figuring it out. You think I have all the answers?
No, not all the answers, but you definitely have more than I do.
I don't know, man. I feel like you've seen just as much as I have, and I value your judgments as well. I mean, from a startup perspective, I think the best advice I have is just hone in on a certain set of skills. So figure out what what you want to utilize in your day-to-day, and what are your long-term aspirations? Like, where do you see yourself in like 10, 15 years? What do you want to build for yourself? Like,
I've always hated this question,
I hate it too because I don't have an answer. But one of the best advice I ever got was from one of my former professors in my MBA program, and he said, "Find a person that you want to like, who you want to emulate."
Become.
Emulate is a better word. Become it means like you're gonna be exactly that person. I think emulate for me is more like you're kind of gonna be in parallel, but you're gonna be your own person.
No,
right?
I do like the term actually. Emulate is a great word.
So I would use the term emulate for this because in the sense of a career path, then what you can do, he said, is you basically look at their accomplishments, and you can also usually find some sort of resume or some sort of biop about them, right? And then you just work backwards from that. Like, what steps did they take? What kind of routine did they create for themselves? Like, I know a lot of people read Steve Jobs, autobiography, and stuff like that. Not that I want to be like Steve Jobs, like not what I'm looking to emulate, but I think that's the hardest question, right? Like, anybody can work, but
Can
not
you
many
can
people.
can you name the person you want to emulate? It's not a
What do you
secret.
mean? Sorry, can you
Well,
restate the question?
sure. I mean, if have you got the person you would like to emulate in your field? If it's not Steve Jobs, right?
I mean, it kind of sounds corny, but
That's okay.
I look up to Elon Musk a lot, even though he's a little
That's
eccentric.
corny, man.
It's pretty
That
corny, right? I think he's an
that's pretty cool.
interesting individual. I mean,
Mm.
he just has a vision of things and he's unapologetic about it. He doesn't
He's
care what
visionary,
anybody
yeah.
thinks. He's visionary and he doesn't care. Like, I appreciate people that don't let others influence them negatively. And so
Right.
Elon Musk for me is one of those people that just shoots from the hip. Of course he's flawed, but I like that humanity about him.
Hmm.
He kind of just bears everything out and he doesn't pretend to, I don't feel like he pretends to be someone he's not.
There is no hypocrisy out there, no, definitely.
No, and I admire that a lot. So for
Mm.
me, I think that's what I'm looking at. Again, I care more about the human characteristics than I care about
Hmm.
the actual. I think success is just a term that we throw around too freely nowadays. And like
Right.
having a lot of money isn't necessarily being successful, in my opinion. It's what comes with the success, right? Of living whatever life you want to live and being that person that you want to be. I don't think that money is the end all be all of like success. So I
All
think
right.
that for me, that's why when you ask me that question, I don't know. Do you have someone that you admire or
Of
like
course I
looking to
do.
live that you're looking to like live emulate long term?
Well, in the terms of business, definitely. But in my case, it's going to be Richard Branson. And I'll tell you why.
Good
Be
choice.
because, well, actually, I've seen him with my own eyes in Kiev once. And
Nice.
sense of humor, he's the one who enjoys life, absolutely, like 100%. He nearly died like dozen times, and he's got happy family life.
Mm,
That's what I really admire him. So he lives his life as if it were, I mean, as if today was the last day of his life, and he does enjoy it. So this is what I would like to emulate as far as traits, human traits are concerned. Hmm.
I like that. It's rooted in a lot of like truth, feels very feels grounded. That I could see you living up to that actually. That's a cool role model to have.
I'm
But
flattered.
yeah. Well, I mean, you're a good
Okay.
dude, you know that.
Not sure. Okay, let's step aside for for a second, and there's one more thing I would like to ask you. So,
Sure.
so probably you've been following the startup, different startups, right? And I guess the number of women out there in the startups is not that high. Well, is
It's
that
small.
true? And
Yep.
what do you think? What are the preconditions for that?
Oh, so it's not just women. So women is just a casualty of startups being white male run and owned.
Really?
I think,
Hmm.
yeah. So you
So
don't
there's a
see a lot of
segregation
people
there
of,
too?
yeah, you don't see a lot of black people. You don't see a whole lot
Asians?
of, so that's the thing. It depends on the industry because there are a lot of Asian startups, right?
There
I
are.
think,
Chi
yeah,
mhm.
yeah, yeah.
Chinese in the
It
first
depends.
place.
It depends. It really just depends, right? Depends on the market,
Hmm.
depends on the product.
Sure.
But for the most part, you're right. I mean, if we're focused on women in the question that you asked, yeah, it's a problem. It's just like the same thing with, why there's not very many women engineers or,
Right.
I think there's other professions too that I'm just blanking on right now that don't see a lot of women. So there are a lot of
Hmm.
initiatives to now that this is kind of widely exposed. And in America, there's a lot of civil rights tension right now in general with Black Lives Matters movement and um,
Sure.
with other minority groups that are finally speaking up and actually getting their voice heard for the first time, really really heard.
Hmm.
So I think we'll see this change slowly, but yeah, my startup, I would say, I think at my best guess is probably like there's 20 to 30% are women,
Hmm.
70% men. And in the engineering roles, it's probably overwhelmingly like, 90% men.
90%.
Yeah,
well, that's
it's
obvious.
a high percentage. That's my best guess off the top of my head, without being more prescriptive. But yeah, there's a big gap there that needs to be filled. And I think women are starting to be more incorporated into this world, but it's
Right.
it's going to take a lot of just being proactive in terms of hiring women and being conscious of the balance. And I don't think it's going to come naturally to a lot of startups to bring in women, because historically it's been a white male dominated kind of industry.
But don't you think that one of the reasons also is that it's extremely stressful kind of activity, isn't it?
Yeah, but like I don't understand why that would be eliminating women. What do you mean?
Not eliminating, but just the kind of challenges that are offered by the industry. I mean, not every single woman is, just let me give you another example. It's not every single woman is willing to take part in an MMA fight, just because the kind of challenges that it offers, it's not really attractive and appealing to women, to kind of features that female features, right?
But is that just your opinion, or have you heard women say this?
No, it's just my personal subjective opinion.
I would challenge that. I don't think that that's necessarily the case. I think that women are interested in startups. I think they're very well equipped to be in startups. I just think that they haven't been offered the opportunities to join the startups. I think it's been a gated club, from at least my perspective.
Right.
It might be that it's, the bar to get in is higher for them. But I think what it comes down to is that we all just have to pump our brakes and see why these things are the way they are because of history, and then see how we're going to change it moving forward. That's all it is. I don't know that there's another way to really address this. And I'm not saying it's gonna change overnight. It's not. It's just we're gonna just need to just check ourselves every step of the way. And especially you and me, who are white guys, we have this kind of perspective, because I think a lot of things come easier for us because we just don't have to think about it. But for women, I think there's a different reality there that we just don't see, and it's different because
Definitely.
I've always had to ask these questions, because I'm not a woman. I don't know what it's like. It's different, so.
But the good news is that the future is definitely going to belong to women.
I think it should belong to women. Have you seen them when they're giving birth? I mean, they're superheroes in my opinion.
I was there.
Insane. I would never be able to do something like this, or maybe I can. You never know. But the fact that they can do it, I mean,
yeah.
I think it's a testament to their strength. So
absolutely,
that's why there's a World Women's Day, and and it's much more popular than the World's Men's Day.
Yeah, definitely. But I think there is a segregation. Well, actually, it's not my favorite holiday. I think one of the reasons is that there is so much hypocrisy about that. I mean, well, in this country, men buy flowers. They're obsessed with buying flowers just one day per year, and the rest of the time they just
they spend it on alcohol.
Well, that's not the point. I mean, they just how do you call it? They delegate the kind of work, like all the chores, everything are done by women, and it's just like taken for granted. And I think it's not fair. That's why I kind of disrespect this holiday, because it's not a holiday. That's it.
I know. I feel you.
I wish the rest of the time was a holiday, but
yeah, I mean, we can change this. Again, I think it goes back to your earlier question about what, how do we get more women into this industry and whatnot. And it's like, we have to stop taking things for granted. Women don't just do things because they, they're there and they want to do it. They do it because they're, it needs to be done. And I think, I took my mother for granted for many years in terms of all the things that she did. And Mom, if you're watching this, I love you and you're the best mom ever. So, I think it's easy to sometimes overlook that. But I think that's true for everybody, you know, like we tend to sometimes just go on autopilot and forget all the things that we receive from people that we love and that we admire, and
That's
it's just
true.
being grateful, you know, just being grateful for those people regularly.
I can relate to that. All right. So I've had enough of your time. Thank you for this conversation. I've really enjoyed it.
Yeah, same. Always,
Hmm.
always fun talking to you. I look forward to doing it again in
Likewise.
the future. And maybe next time
Definitely.
we talk, I'll have another baby on my side.
Oh,
Allison is due April 5th, so
oh my
two
gosh.
less than 2 weeks, I think. Yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Well, send my love to Lisa and your little one, and I hope all is well with you, my friend.
Sure. Likewise. Thank you.
Thank
Take
you.
care of
Thank
yourself.
you. You
Bye.
too.
Bye, everyone.
Cheers. See you.
Cheers.